Today we got a really interesting story about Warren Buffett and the surprising moment between him and his daughter. You think being the child of one of the richest people in the world comes with all the financial perks, right? Well, not exactly. But before we jump in, let me tell you what this channel is all about. It's your daily go-to for all things business, finance, investing, AI, and the most fascinating stories that are shaping our world. So here's the deal. Warren Buffett, worth around $140 billion, is famously known for his generosity. He has donated billions to charity over the years, but when it comes to his kids, it's a different story. He's basically saying not so fast and isn't just handing over his money to them. And that brings us to this story involving his daughter, Susie Buffett. Some time ago, Susie had just had a baby and needed to renovate her kitchen to make space for a high chair. Pretty normal stuff, right? She needed about $41,000 to get the renovations done. So she did what many of us would do, especially if her dad was a billionaire. She asked her dad for a loan. Wait, a loan? She didn't just straight up ask him to hand it over? And what did Warren say? Go to the bank, like everyone else. Yep, that was his response. Not exactly what you'd expect from a guy who could write a check for 41K without even blinking. Susie later talked about it in a documentary called Becoming Warren Buffett. She explained that she wasn't asking for a handout. She genuinely wanted a loan.
I had some trouble with that one just because I thought I was asking for a loan. I was not asking him to give me the money. And I thought, oh, come on, can't you do this?
But Warren held his ground. For him, it was important that his kids face the same rules as everyone else. Now, you might think Susie would be frustrated by this, and at the time she was. She even joked to her mom that one day she'd end up on the cover of People magazine, homeless, while her dad would still be the super rich guy.
I'm going to be on the cover of People magazine someday, homeless, because my dad will be like this super rich guy and, we'll all be wandering around.
But here's the twist. She actually respects him for it now. I basically agree with him, she said. But it's sort of strange when, most parents want to buy things for their kids and all you need is a small sum of money to fix up the kitchen, not to go to the beach for 6 months. She said she never felt her dad was cheap, just careful. Growing up in the Buffett household meant having a pretty normal life, or as normal as it gets when your dad is a billionaire. In fact, Susie and her brother Peter didn't even realize how wealthy their father was until they were much older. Apparently, Susie found out when she came across an article in the Wall Street Journal in her early 20s. And it suddenly clicked that their dad was far more than just a regular guy going to the office. Peter, on the other hand, thought Warren was a security analyst and assumed that meant he checked alarm systems. He didn't understand until much later that his father was one of the most successful investors in the world. Just like most other kids, the Buffett siblings got allowances that they quickly spent on candy and magazines. And get this, Warren had a slot machine at home where the kids would put their money in, and he just opened the back and take it out again. Smart, right? Susie also talked about how her mom played a big role in softening Warren over the years. But when it comes down to it, Warren's mindset on money shaped how his kids live their lives. Susie agrees with his financial philosophy. She said, I actually agree with his philosophy of not dumping a bunch of money on your kids, and she is grateful for the values her parents instilled in her. Warren's approach wasn't about being stingy, it was about keeping things real and giving back in a meaningful way. So what will the famous billionaire do with all this money? He has made it very clear that all of his wealth, nearly 99% of it, will be donated to charity, going back to the society that allowed him to achieve so much. Here's what he said a long time ago about this topic.
99% plus will go back to society. And that'll actually count everything that my family and I have lived on during our entire lifetimes. But just because we've been treated extraordinarily well by society. I'm lucky. Bill said if I was born a long time ago, I'd have been some animal's lunch.
So it's obvious that he doesn't believe in creating a dynasty of wealth for his children. Instead, he wants to empower others and help solve real-world issues. In his view, passing down billions can actually be damaging, creating a sense of entitlement rather than encouraging people to make their own way in the world. Warren has already given billions to different philanthropic initiatives, mostly through the Gates Foundation and his own foundation. He's been a huge advocate of the Giving Pledge, a commitment by some of the world's wealthiest people to give away the majority of their fortunes. He believes that those who are lucky enough to accumulate vast wealth have a responsibility to use it to benefit society. His children, Susie, Howard, and Peter, are fully behind this vision. In fact, when they were younger, each of them received a gift of $90,000 in Berkshire Hathaway stock. Peter, in an NPR interview, shared that he got his stock at 19 and used it to buy recording equipment. That was the only personal inheritance he received, and instead of hoarding it, he invested in his passion, music. So maybe their dad didn't give them cash or loans, but his kids have received support for their philanthropic efforts. In 2006, Warren gave each of them $17.5 million in Class B Berkshire Hathaway shares to help run their foundations. Then, on his 82nd birthday, he announced an even bigger gift, pledging 12.2 million shares to be split annually, amounting to about $100 million per year for each of their organizations. When all is said and done, each of their foundations is set to receive a staggering $2.5 billion after his estate is fully distributed. Still, we have to remember that having money in a foundation is quite different from having cash in the bank. Ultimately, Warren wants all his fortune donated within a decade after his passing, ensuring his wealth continues to make a real difference.
Let the resources flow to those who use them best. But then I think they ought to give it back to society primarily when they get through. I do not believe in a divine right of the womb. I mean, I do not think that that if you select the right womb, that you're entitled to do nothing the rest of your life.
Susie has said that she feels grateful for the values her parents instilled in her, which included not relying on inherited wealth, but instead focusing on building something meaningful of her own. Even when Susie didn't get the loan, she reflected and said, "I basically think he's been right." So there you have it. Even Warren Buffett's kids don't get any special treatment. Now go watch this video about Buffett's first tax return when he was just a 14-year-old boy. He had some interesting business expenses.